So there's some parallels there. In terms of strengths, what I see as strengths of this approach, we now have arrived at a position that is held up by scientists of quite high standing, say Francis Collins is an example, who can quite actively stand up and witness their faith even while they perform excellent science. I see that as a positive. Following on from that, this model allows you to clearly articulate your theological views and preferences. There's no cloak and dagger here. You can get up and, like Francis Collins did in the video that we saw, and say, I'm a scientist, I'm a doctor, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I put these things together and I don't see a conflict. You don't really see that approach too much from the intelligent design community. You will, of course, from Old-Earth Creationism and Young-Earth Creationism. Okay. This is also the first viewpoint that we've looked at, and the only one that we will look at, that promotes a reconciliation model across the board. This view is the one that says science and faith go together just fine. Both means of revelation, and there should be a reconciliation. Okay. Questions or comments on theistic evolution before we take a brief tour into atheistic evolutionism? Yeah.
What would you say is the most common belief within the church?
The most common belief within the church? Young-Earth Creationism, bar none. Absolutely. Yeah.
And even like, I probably might not know, but like maybe in university students? Like,
I don't really know, to be honest. Even within students who take biology, what you often find, and I get this sort of from interacting with people online, I meet many people online who say, I was a Christian once, then I found out about evolution, and I lost my faith. So they don't seem to stop at theistic evolution, they tend to go all the way. And typically they go from Young-Earth Creationism to atheism, kind of just like that, right? And they sometimes haven't been exposed to these different models of interaction between the two topics, yeah. If you are consistently told that either it's this way or toss your Bible in the garbage, well, what do you do when you're confronted with evidence that seems quite convincing? Some people toss their Bibles in the garbage. I think that's incredible.
How do you think that this could be promoted, or do you think it should be?
That's a great question. Should you promote this? I take the view that people need to see the information. People at least should have an idea of what options are out there. Because otherwise you end up with these individuals who are in that position, right? They only know the one. They're presented with something that seems quite convincing against their viewpoint, and their whole world comes crashing down.
And it's word of mouth too, mostly, right?
Yeah.
That's how they're
Yeah.
getting the knowledge.
On the other hand, are you going to see this in a sermon at your church anytime soon? No, not likely. Not likely. Yeah. I've even asked my own pastor, should, he be, would he be interested in me talking? And I think there's some openness to the idea, these ideas personally. He's not an expert in these areas. He doesn't know all the details. He would have to take my word for it to a large degree. Do I think he's going to let me preach a sermon anytime soon? No way. And to be honest, I'm not sure if that would be the best approach. Probably the best approach would be some sort of like adult Sunday school class kind of approach. But, I mean, honestly, can you imagine this kind of stuff in your church? What do you think would happen? On the other hand, how many people who learn about these ideas outside the church kind of go and say, I'm looking at the one thing, I'm looking at the other thing, my church is completely missing the boat on this. What else are they missing the boat on? And then the seeds of doubt begin to grow. So it's kind of a nasty catch-22 in a lot of ways.
It's just interesting though, because of the about one of the strengths, like the scientists, the high standing.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, that's a huge influence, I think.
It is.
Myself and like other university students, right?
Absolutely. And I have a lot of hope now that we have an individual like Francis Collins, the head of the Genome Project, for goodness sake, someone who has incredible stature as a scientist and who can come out and say, and I'm a Christian, he's written his book. His book's not perfect by any stretch, but would I be happy to hand that book to anyone in my congregation? Absolutely, in a heartbeat. Let me just finish off so that we're sensitive to those who have other classes, and then there'll be more time for questions and comments after. Okay, so the last stop on the Whirlwind Tour is a stop that I hope you never approach. This idea of atheistic evolutionism. It has some key tenets. The first one is common with what we've seen with theistic evolution in that it recognizes that evolutionary biology is a very well-supported scientific theory. On the other hand, they hold that evolution and faith are fundamentally incompatible views. So they are explanations of reality that are fundamentally in conflict with one another. You might begin to hear some echoes of another view that we've explored at this point. They also hold that acceptance of evolution should go hand in hand with rejecting faith. Is this sounding familiar? What view have we seen that it would at least sign on to these two, if not this one? Well, we're back at Old-Earth Creationism in a sense, right? There's actually quite a bit of congruence in my mind between the mindset of atheistic evolutionists and some ideas within Old-Earth Creationism. They both sort of say, Genesis is very straightforward. It says this, this, and this. That's, in the case of an atheist, would say that has been shown to be untrue. Ergo, so much the worse for faith. Whereas a Old-Earth Creationist would say, Genesis is very plain. Genesis says this and that. Science shows otherwise. Well, so much the worse for science. They're actually agreeing on some things. Okay. So who are the key promoters? Well, you're familiar probably with Richard Dawkins, who's up until recently a chair at, oh boy, Oxford, I believe, or Cambridge? I think it's Oxford. Now I'm on the hop and I don't know. Another fellow from the States, P.Z. Myers, influential blogger, if that can be considered influential. And then this fellow by the name of Sam Harris, author. Does this individual look familiar with you? You know who that is? You can read the fine print, you can see. That's Rick Warren, the pastor of Saddleback Church, who in some ways acts as a voice, a prominent voice for the American evangelical community. This is a still picture shot that was part of a conversation between these two individuals. Warren, of course, as an evangelical, feels the need to reject evolutionary theory. It was an interesting discussion. Okay, question for you. Is atheism scientific? Like theistic evolution, like we just talked about, atheistic evolutionism is a philosophical add-on to the scientific study of evolution. So it's actually not scientific in its own right. Neither is theistic evolution. They're both philosophical approaches that are based on the science of evolution. Neither, as such, have empirical support for their positions. Both models go beyond what science can empirically demonstrate. It's another way of saying, like we've seen in Gordon Glover's lectures, that science is